Hello and welcome to Today with John and Helen. But interestingly, neither Helen or John is here. But I'm here. I'm going to be your host today on the show. And today we're speaking about ancestral trauma and healing. It's a very interesting topic. So what I heard is I've read about some of it online about how ancestral healing is a type of energy and healing based on the belief that the actions of our ancestors create a kind of energy network that affects the happiness, the health, the prosperity, and the relationships of their descendants, meaning your forefathers, your ancestors. And if you're African, the word ancestors is not a big deal to you. So the patterns and problems can be created in our DNA. But do we have the power to change the course of our lives? So joining me this morning is Phoenix Sun. She's a visionary artist, and she will be talking about ancestral trauma and healing. Joining us all the way from Edo State. Good morning, Phoenix. How are you doing?
Good morning, everybody. I'm
Morning.
so excited to be talking about this. It's such a special and interesting topic.
Yes, it is.
It's so interesting because it's prevalent in our lives. We are our ancestors. We are the full representations of our ancestors. So yes, we are able to change our lives. We are able to do the things our ancestors could not do. We are able to carry out their wishes, their dreams. They're inside of us. So that urge, that need to live a certain life, to do a certain thing, to speak certain truths will always be there.
Okay. Interesting. So thank God you paused there because I was going to stop you to ask you that you should first of all tell us what does ancestral trauma mean? So because to so many people it just seems like something very vague. Are you saying that if my great great grandmother, for example, let me use the most recent thing to say that maybe if she suffered a heartbreak, does this mean I will suffer a heartbreak too? So break it down in layman terms. What does ancestral trauma mean? And then we'll come to ancestral healing.
Okay, so pretty much what you said is kind of accurate. You take on the energy. So just imagine a child is born into a family, and that family there's history of chronic stress in their body. You can tell. You can tell by the way they move, by their, you can just see signs like this family is stressed about money. This family is not. They're not rested. There's just this energy of worry, constant worry. And then a mom gets pregnant and she's carrying a child inside her belly. This child starts to feel all of these energies inside the belly. They start to feel the tightness, the tension, the sadness, all of those emotional worry. And if it's chronic, and if it's happened in your mother, and it's happened in your great grandmother, it's been happening. And you can see once you look down your family history, you can start to see the things, and these things will trigger you as a person. If you start to look at these things, they will make you feel some type of way. So that's a sign. That trigger is a sign that that's something that probably needs to be looked at. And so that's an example of trauma that can just be created from birth. You can just be born into this family, and you already have a certain way of acting towards something that is out of your control. This is just your karma, what you've been born with. It's like your blueprint now. So you now have to. Okay, I'll stop here. I feel like you have a question that will lead to what I'm trying to say.
Okay. So how do I know? So some people are not so fortunate to have they just have their parents. So for example, lucky me, I have my granny still alive, my mother. So my son has his great grandmother, his grandmother, his mother alive. So it's easy to study those patterns. But if you do not have any of those, your parents, for example, how do you begin to trace? So in your life, for example, let me just give an average individual probably dealing with anger and some things, or you just find out that you're in some particular environment and you're just upset, or some things get you, like how you use the example of money. You know how we're very spiritual and we just go, oh, or we just, sometimes some of us are spiritual, some of us don't see to it. How do I know that, okay, this is a pattern that my grandfather has taken, my father has taken? How do I now break this pattern in my own life? And then first of all, how do I find out? And then when I find out, how do I break the pattern?
You have your mother. She's the best. Your mothers, your aunties, your grandmother, if you have your fathers, your uncles, those are the closest family ancestry you have physically with you. So those family members are going to embody traits that are inside of you that you may not see or you may not even recognize in yourself because you may be suppressing them, you may not like them, there may be traits that you may distance yourself from subconsciously. So your family members will portray all of these things and it will be the things that you would probably wish that they would change about them or they would embody. You know, it would be you projecting how you're feeling upon them. So your mom is the best because you could ask her how she grew up, what were things she was worried about, how was her pregnancy, you know, how was carrying you inside of her belly, how did that feel for her? Was she stressed around that time? What were the things that were going on? You know, what was the energy around giving birth to you? What trauma did I even cause to you? How was your birth? How was the whole situation? Was she supported when she was nurturing you as a baby? Because all of those things too, you as a child, you still get impacted with all of those situations that are happening. So that's a very good way to recognize and asking about your family, their childhood, what they really experienced, like your mother or her grandmother experienced, and seeing by doing that, you start to see the patterns that are there. It will be obvious. You see patterns that limitations, beliefs, behaviors, things that a part of you will feel like, I don't know if I would do this. I don't know if I would let this slide. I don't know if I would say this. I don't know if I would let this stop me. And then your job is to now go in yourself and recognize these patterns within you and how you do them. And this part is I guess the tricky part because going within to recognize this is not so tricky actually because if you go to your family members, go to the people that you don't like, your aunties and uncles, that you don't really understand how they behave, they're always telling you things you don't like. Those behaviors, some patterns there, those are ancestral patterns that just causes rift between families that just happen on a natural basis and we just accept them as I don't like this person did me something. So I will hold this thing against you forever. And I always think like this anytime you come here. Or something goes on in the family, we cannot speak about it fully because we don't want to bring it, we're hiding. We don't want anybody to know what's going on. It's better to hide. Or in this family, we don't do this, we don't do that. So subconsciously, we start to tell ourselves these things. So once you break down those things in yourself, you're breaking those patterns because you're strong. You're in your DNA, they're in your blood. It's gonna feel like you're going against what you know. You're going against home, but it's actually the opposite. You're going towards home.
Okay, interesting, very interesting. So you have investigated and you have found out. How do you go about healing? How do you go about breaking those patterns? Because you see, it's one thing to identify a problem, it's another thing to try and solve that problem. So how do you go about on this journey to breaking the bad patterns you do not like and the problems created in your life to healing?
Okay, so I won't say go about. I won't. First of all, I won't say go about it like something is wrong and I need to fix it. If you go in with that mentality, you're gonna go into self-hate mentality, which is
Okay.
gonna make things more difficult. The best approach would be to start to do the things you want to do, the things that scare you. So there's fear, which is a very prevalent thing in this society, and that's one of the things that used to keep people in line. You see little children, if they're going towards fire, you tell them, don't touch that, it's going to burn you. You've already told the child, anytime I see fire, I'll probably get burned. So fear is something that's always there, and those beliefs and things we have that are ancestral, they hide behind our fears. So facing your fears, daring to be different from your family, not being immersed to your family. I know now in Nigerian society, it's very different from people to actually see themselves separate from their families. See themselves as, okay, I'm born into this family, but I can still exist as a separate being, but not fear of losing my family, not fear of losing connection, not fear of being orchestrated or abandoned, any of those things. I will still be myself. If that's happening, if that can happen, and you're able to embody yourself fully in the presence of your environment, your family members, you're able to show that allowance, You're able to allow the urges that's coming from you, because the urges that are coming from you are not, they're not bad. They're ancestral. I'll give an example as to cannabis. This urge that comes from people to smoke cannabis is not an urge that is bad, wrong, to be shamed, to be cast aside as. It's something in their blood that ancestors. This is medicine that has helped ancestors over years to overcome traumas that they have gone through. It's plant medicine. So now that, imagine a boy, 19-year-old, 20-year-old boy, has an urge, and the society has made rules that has criminalized this part of them, their ancestry, their own blood.
I have to
So
interrupt
I
you
would
there,
say,
Phoenix. So
okay,
you say that someone has an urge. What is someone who has never been exposed to the example you use, for example, cannabis, and then has never had the urge or anything? Because sometimes for things that are, when you use that kind of example, some people just come into that by accident or by experiment with friends and all. So even if your ancestor used it, if you never come across it, for example, how do you have an urge? You only have an urge or an experience with something that you have held before, or you have been with.
okay, so I'm guessing, I'm trying to understand. What you're saying is you wouldn't have a desire to want to go do it if you have not had it before?
Yeah, so I'm looking at the example that you stated. You only have, I feel like some desires are only to things that you have exposed yourselves to before. Yes, we're human and sometimes we want to do all sorts of things. But for example, when you talk about cannabis, some people would never ever experience it for the rest of their lives. And some people, it's just a little exposure to it, maybe from hanging out with friends and experiment, and they get hooked on it. So when you
Okay,
say
so
to me about the urge of wanting to use it, if you have never been exposed to it, I don't know, where would that urge come from? How do you even identify it?
okay, so let's the example you gave of hanging out with friends. You hang out with friends. The people who hang out with people who smoke and they never smoke and they just find it, like, I don't care.
Yeah.
I'm not doing that. That's not me. And the people who go there and I feel like, okay, I feel like I may want to do this. I may want to try this, and they try it. So there's two sides to every. There's double sides to every coin. There's some people who never have to go down that path. It doesn't mean that they don't have to. They're not integrating other parts of their ancestry. They're not healing other parts of their ancestry. That's just one part of ancestry. It may be that that energy is very prevalent in a particular person's ancestry, and in a particular person's ancestry, they have a whole other energy that's very prevalent there. So everyone's not going to have behave the same towards particular things. Some people will. Some people use other forms of medicine. Some people use other forms of healing and integration. So the urge comes naturally because naturally you move in places where these things happen. That's how the universe works. It moves you around to what you need.
Okay, interesting. Because of time, I'd like us to focus now on healing. How do we break patterns that we see in our lives that we do not like, and how do we begin to change them?
A very prevalent pattern is immersement. This is when you don't have an identity separate from your family members, the people you grew up with. This is when you feel like you don't know who you are without the approval of your family members. So if you start to regain your approval, if you start to give yourself the approval, you start to do the things that really matter to you, and not self-sacrifice or people please, which is probably a very common thing. It's either you're self-sacrificing or you're people pleasing. You're not doing those things, even when people around you may be doing those things or expecting those things. You're truly honoring your truth. Once you're honoring your truth and you're living authentically to how you truly feel, no matter what the society, the traditions that has been laid down is saying to you, no matter the standards that you're expected to conform to, once you're truly living authentically, you're healing generational traumas, you're breaking generational bonds that have been, especially if you're doing something that your generation has, in your family has never done. If you look back, there's nobody who's done what you're doing. You've just broken a whole bunch of generational traumas. So that's an example. You just have to keep living authentically because your ancestors will always they're with you. They will always be with you. They will always guide you in the direction that will bring you happiness, that will bring you the most fulfillment. That's what they want. That's what you want. So it's the same
Okay.
thing. It's just living authentically and not allowing your fears to hold you back. That's it.
All right.
And asking questions, not being afraid to ask questions. Ask questions, even the difficult questions. Ask tough conversations, even if it's your elder. Ask your elders questions. If they don't know, it's okay for them to say they don't know, instead of pretending like you're not supposed to ask, or asking questions is
Yeah.
bad. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. Thank you very much. Um, I like what you said about asking questions, because as humans, to ensure that our future is good, we have to do a little research into our history and our past, and just, I think with everything, and just find out, how did this work? How did this work? Why did they choose to do this thing a certain way? And then begin to make decisions on how we can make it better even in the future. Thank you so much, Felix, for your time this morning.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for taking time. Okay, so we take a break for the gym with Dolly showing us some exercises. And right after that, we have Pharaoh talking about self-love. Stay with us.